Welcome to Born on the Bayou Sports, a Houston sports show made for Houstonians by Houstonians. Join Tim Costello and Scott Barzilla every week as they break down the latest in Houston Astros, Rockets, and Texans news. Tim's a former minor league broadcaster, and Scott has written 2 books on the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah, if Javier could get it figured out, it would make things a lot easier because he was that guy everybody was counting on this year to be a Cy Young candidate, take that big step forward and help anchor this rotation with Fromber.
Since he's come to Houston, you can look at the development of guys like Carlos Correa defensively, Jeremy Pena defensively, Alex Bregman's, certainly I think a better than average third baseman.
And now you're putting teams in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. Now here comes Will Anderson. Pin back your ears, let's go. So if you're Bayou born and bred, or just like spending time in the H, sit down, relax, and stay Houston strong. Welcome in a new episode, a new look here on Born on the Bayou Sports. Tim Costello, Scott Barzilla coming to you here on a live look here on a Tuesday night, Scott.
Yeah, I'm going to have to applaud Tim on this effort here. He is doing a lot of work behind the scenes to make this a much more interactive experience for our listeners and viewers. So if you haven't had a chance to view the program, this is a great episode, to try that feature, which you can do easily on Apple Podcast.
Yeah, Apple Podcasts. We're also, I don't know if you saw, Scott, the video's now out on Facebook. We're going to be there weekly and YouTube as well to catch the whole video. Really trying to just, I keep talking about production value and putting a better product out there for the fans of the show and bringing in new fans, right? So now that we do have the video, I know I've been on you a little bit to up production value on your side with the new mic. So I want to commend you on that, on getting on board here with us and hopefully on the ride to the top.
Yeah, every little bit we can do to make it work, right?
Yeah, every little bit helps, and we're happy to do what we can to make the show better for the fans. But Scott, it's been a pretty crazy, eventful week, but still like uneventful at the same time as, the Astros are in the offseason. The Texans unfortunately lost the week before. You and I are big college basketball people for our teams. And so we did have some games to watch there, but, really kind of a big thing that was happening this weekend. It was Championship Sunday. And that was a big weekend, big, great slate of games, but yet somehow was it same old to you as well? We had these amazing matchups. It was supposed to be the anointing of Lamar Jackson. It was supposed to be this young upstart Lions team. And here we go. Patty Mahomes right back to the Super Bowl, and, 49ers defense continues to win championships.
And part of what was interesting to me is, and obviously we're a Houston-centric podcast, and one of the things that I am proud of in terms of Houston sports is I think 2 of your teams have been really pioneers in the whole, evolving of analytics and in the whole process of how they build their teams and how they build their strategy. Daryl Morey with the Rockets obviously was big into the use of analytics, not only in acquiring players, but also in determining, how are we going to employ those players in order to get the most out of what we have. And obviously Jeff Lunell and the Astros were doing the same. And so I think there was a huge spend, and more or less, more in the Lions and San Francisco game than in the Baltimore Chiefs game, but in the role of analytics and decision making. So I just wanted to take your temperature to see where you are on that pendulum between more of a traditionalist and more of one of those new age analytics spreadsheet kind of people.
I definitely, I'm an analytics guy. I believe in the numbers. But there's also a flow of the game and judging how your guy is playing too, right? Where I feel like baseball is the perfect game for analytics to really take a look at those numbers, because that baseball is numbers at the end of the day. You count everything that you do, and a season is a summation of all that counting. The playoffs are a little bit different, and there's definitely a feel and a vibe that go with the playoffs. And let's take a look at like what Lamar Jackson did on Sunday. Lamar wasn't having a great game, right? So I understand when you have a game plan set ahead of time, and everything's telling you to do this, or the Chiefs are weak here, or there's an opportunity if you attack this part of the field. But at the end of the day, if Lamar's not comfortable and he's not confident, he can't get that play there, you got to change, and you've got to find something that gets your quarterback going and gets him back into rhythm. And if you rely too much, say on the analytical perspective, or just say we got to stick to it, it's not always going to be successful. I think the Rockets are a fantastic example of that. Daryl Morey loved analytics, and he went heavy into 3-point shot, dunk, no mid-range. That was the whole Rockets game plan for the longest time. But yet they never had good 3-point shooters, right? They never adapted to what the analytics actually called for. And so if you don't have the ability to adapt and make changes when things aren't going your way, at some point, talent, elite talent will supersede just running the numbers. Because even when the Astros won the World Series in 2017, yes, they did it by using numbers and running the analytics. And, if they look at it from the blackjack perspective, they always went with what the best percentage play was. They still had Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, Brian McCann, Justin Verlander. They still had elite players. And so the A's went by analytics and didn't have those same players, and they didn't win a championship. So at some point, you've got to have a blend of elite playmakers that just have the balls to get it done when it matters. And you've got to put together an analytical game plan that gives them an opportunity to be successful.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, letting people behind the scenes. Tim and I text each other on a constant basis, just, whenever things come up. And we'll get to the Rockets a little bit later on in the program. But one of the things he texted was, what we really need is a two-guard that can shoot 40% from three-point range and play defense. And I was like, yeah, that and every other team, right? I mean, so, the problem is that I think teams in the NBA, certainly, and teams in Major League Baseball, they figured out what makes individual players successful. I mean, we figured out the whole idea that you want guys that walk more. We figured out we want better plate discipline in football. We figured out, what an elite quarterback looks like. Question is finding those guys, right? And so, with the Rockets, where is that 40-point 3-point shooter? You tell me, I don't know. And with a lot of teams in the NFL, like I can sit there and look at a CJ Stroud, and I can look at him now after a year in the NFL and say, yeah, he's a top flight quarterback. But when do you know these guys are from college are top flight quarterbacks, and when are they not? I mean, obviously Justin Fields is a high pick, and he hasn't yet proven that he's a top flight quarterback, and he's probably going to be looking for a second team here when we get to the NFL draft. So, the whole big question is, yeah, you can identify what greatness looks like, but can you find that in players? That's the hard part.
And there are guys who consistently do it their entire career as a coach, right? Like look at Andy Reid. I don't know if necessarily you'd say that he's a big analytics guy, but if I had to go win a football game and I needed an offensive-minded coach to look at tape or statistics or whatever you wanted and to find an area of the field to attack, right? If that's the portion of analytics that I want to use as a coach, give me portions of their lineup that are weak. Where do we match up better on the field than they do, and let me go attack? And it seemed this week Travis Kelce was the matchup. They had absolutely no answer for Taylor Swift's boyfriend over the middle.
Yeah, and I think the guy that really deserves a tip of the cap, at least in terms of strategy, is Steve Spagnuolo. He's the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs. I mean, you go into a week with the Buffalo Bills, he allows Josh Allen to gain 70-plus yards on the ground. But yet, the Bills never had a play of more than 18 yards from scrimmage. And so obviously the strategy there was the Buffalo Bills survive off big plays. And so if we limit their big playability, then our offense can hopefully score enough points to beat them. And that's what ended up happening. Now look at what they did with the Ravens. I don't know who you put this on, but Lamar Jackson did not carve them up like he did the Texans defense. I mean, he gains 100 yards against the Texans. Really was ineffective running the football against the Chiefs. And I think part of that at least has to be on the Chiefs for how they defended him. Part of that's probably also on the Ravens for the fact that they didn't employ what is arguably and probably inarguably their greatest weapon, which was Lamar Jackson. But tip of the cap to Steve Spagnuolo, for employing strategies that took away those teams' best abilities to score points and score points in a hurry.
Absolutely. They say defense wins championships, right? At the end of the day, and finding a way to stop a guy like Lamar Jackson is going to take you all the way to the Super Bowl. And that's what happened. And that's the difference between what the Texans were not able to do 1 week before and what the Chiefs were able to do. The Texans made Lamar Jackson extremely uncomfortable in the pocket, but every single time they had him backing up, he found a way to escape, contain, and pick up that first down where the Chiefs wrangled him in. They kept him in the pocket. They did not let him escape the sacks that would have been drive killers 1 week before that turned into big plays. The Chiefs didn't lose contain. At the end of the day, I think that's where we have some hope for the Texans in the future. These are young guys, and they'll learn these kinds of things. So with a guy like Lamar, let him keep dancing. Don't break contain. Don't make that move at him until you have him surrounded the way that the Chiefs did. And they had a fantastic defensive game plan. You can't say enough great things about what they did on Sunday because they took an offense that was hot. They took what's everybody considering to be the NFL MVP this season, and they shut him down. There's something to be said for some of the mental mistakes that Zay Flowers made that really shot his team in the foot between taking a really bad taunting penalty in a situation where you cannot take that penalty, and then also fumbling the ball into the end zone and it becoming a touchback. So, two rookie plays by a rookie are a big part of that game. But again, Lamar Jackson threw into triple coverage and got picked off. He was constantly just having plays called that just didn't seem like a good fit. And when you put an offense like that they want to stay on schedule, Scott, right? Like they want to pick up 4 or 5 yards on the ground so that way they can play action and hit you big because you've been expecting the run. And when you have to make an offense like that, just sit in shotgun and throw it and throw it and throw it, it's very similar to what happened with the Texans years ago with Gary Kubiak's offense. They're very predictable. Now, there's better offensive playmakers on this Ravens team than the Texans had outside of Andre Johnson. But still, the offense is a little bit predictable when you have to throw it that way because you're just not running the ball well. Or you can't run the ball because you're down 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I think with the Ravens, just the last point I would make on them is that I think we've seen over the years what Lamar Jackson's weaknesses are. I think in what the Chiefs did really well is they made him try to beat them deep, which he's not great at throwing the deep ball, and he's not good at throwing outside the numbers. And those are 2 things that the Chiefs tried to do to him, and they neutralized it. So he wasn't able to or wasn't willing to beat them with his legs. That kind of depends on who you want to ask. But also, taking those plays over the middle that are a whole lot easier for him to convert to guys like Mark Andrews and people like that. But it's kind of to shift over to the other side, to the other game. I want to ask you 2 questions opening up. So Tim, as everybody knows, is from a different generation than I am. So as you're watching the second half, did you have any PTSD going on? And number two, obviously, in some of those big moments for the Lions, what would you have done as the head coach?
When you say PTSD, are you assuming that I was rooting for the Lions?
Well, did you have?
We're a Niners house. My wife is a giant Niners fan, so I was dealing with her having a mental breakdown, thinking that her magical season may be over before she thought it was going to be, and it wouldn't end in a parade. So,
well, no, not so much that, but so much like when you're watching a game, and did you ever have this feeling like, damn, I've seen this before?
yeah, I mean, I definitely get what you're saying there. I don't know. I felt the momentum shift in that game. I thought maybe that was it. Maybe I did feel like I've seen it before, but I also just felt like the Lions came out and they gave a really good first punch, right? And I thought, let's see what comes next, right? What else do they have besides that big first punch?
Flashbacks to the old Oilers days, which I know you were not really a fan for the Oilers. But I particularly think, like, with that deflection off the helmet, it looked like it could be an interception and turns into a 51-yard reception. When you look at a fumble on the very next possession for the Lions, you're thinking, damn, this looks like an Oilers-esque loss, coming down the stretch here. Of course, for younger Texans fans, you're thinking immediately of that, calendar 2020 playoff, but 2019 season playoff Chiefs. And
that one would have been deja vu. That one was one. Yeah, I've definitely seen that before. But when you're a fan, it's different, right? Because thinking about it now, you just never really thought the Texans had that game in control, even though they were up big. You just never really felt like, okay, we've got this. But as a fan, I was going crazy that day. I was ready to crown them, So I feel for the Lions fans. But as a casual observer, because I'm not a Niners fan, but my wife is. So I get to sit there and observe her the same way she observes me watching an Astros playoff game, because there's a similar amount of stress. And I just kept telling her, like, the momentum's going to change. I guarantee you the momentum's going to change. And then the guy, because even if that pass doesn't hit the helmet, and that was pass interference, right? And I think they picked the flag up because he made the play. I think if it doesn't get made, they leave that flag on the field and they call it pass interference. But it was that play specifically changed momentum of that game. The big hit afterwards, I think, was all a result of that play being as weird as it was and going in the Lions not in their direction. And they just got popped, and then they got popped again. And then next thing you know, it's a whole new ball game, right? I'm not going to say Dan Campbell cost them the football game, because even if he kicks the field goal to tie it with like 7 minutes left, the Niners would have got the ball back. But from there, the Niners did go score a touchdown after not getting the fourth down conversion. Now it's a 10-point game. And they end up losing by 3. So I don't know, Scott. I'm not going to say he cost them the football game, but I definitely am going to say, for a guy who has not been in that position before, I'm going to think he learned his lesson, because you can play aggressive like that in the regular season. We saw him against the Cowboys, continue to go for 2 even after the penalties and things of that nature to try and get the win. And the players love that shit. They do. But at the end of the day, this is the NFC Championship. And if you got a chance to tie the football game with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I think you have to tie it and trust your defense with 75 yards behind them to get you a stop and get the football back. Because I think that's the coaching move.
Yeah, to me, the one that was malpractice more than that one was the first one. Because, to give y'all, to set this up and remind everybody. So the Lions are going into the second half 24-7. The 49ers drive the length of the field. And I'm sitting there thinking, as I'm watching this, oh, shit, they're going to punch it in for a touchdown. It's going to be 24-14. And here we go. And the Lions found a way to stop them. Limited to a field goal, 24-10. Lions are driving and get to a 4th and 2. Now, to be perfectly fair, and this was pointed out by other people on the air, that's a 47 or 48 yard attempt. Not necessarily a gimme. Okay, so we want to throw that out there. But let's just assume that you get the points. You go up 27-10. Number one, if you're just looking at the pure math, now you know the 49ers have to score 3 times in order to beat you. And you have taken away the 3 points they scored. You've taken another 5 or 6 minutes off the clock, maybe more, and completely erased those 3 points. And so think about it from a 49ers perspective. You just drove the length of the field, you're feeling good, and then all of a sudden you look up almost half a quarter later and it's the exact same deficit. And you're just thinking, ugh. I think, going forward on 4th and 2. And the other part of that, too, is that your offensive coordinator, who is returning to Detroit, is not going to take a head job for the second year in a row, Brian Johnson. So why not run the football on 4th and 2? You've been dominating the game on the ground. And so that's probably another one. I think the 49ers, when they saw Montgomery go out of the game and they see, they see the other tailback, they're thinking, whew, thank you. Because, and that's the hard part, is that the math, and this is where analytics kind of, rears an ugly head. Everybody knows 7 points versus 3 points, but that's not the math in that situation. The math in that situation is first down or 3 points. And that's how, everybody has to look at it.
You're not guaranteed to get that touchdown. Even if you get the first down, you still might end up settling for 3 at some point. Yeah. So again, you've got to, it's a rookie, not a rookie coach, but it's a rookie move to be in that position. And just, I hope this is the first of many appearances for Dan Campbell. And he looks back and he learns from this situation. And hey, I guarantee you if he had to do it again, he'd take the 3. I really do. He can sit there and tell you whatever he wants at the podium, or whether he does or doesn't. But I have to feel in your heart of hearts, if you had a chance to tie the game up again, trusting your defense the way that you do, and while we're on the subject of turning it down, the coaching jobs, I commend Johnson of the Lions for doing that, because as an NFL head coach, you are tied to a quarterback, right? You are going to succeed or fail whether or not you have a quarterback. That's just the way things work in the NFL these days. Your good defense teams can only go so far. The Pittsburgh Steelers, as we've talked about in this show before, can make a wild card. They're not going further. So if you are going to hitch your wagon to a franchise and say, let's go, do you want to do it with Bryce Young your first time through, and what may be your only shot at the biggest job you're ever going to have? Do you want to do that with the Washington Redskins, who don't have a top 2 draft pick, to go get one of those top 2 guys? They've got a low round pick who showed some flashes in Howell, but maybe he's the guy, maybe he's not. Do you want to do that with any of these teams? Because I think that's why Slowick turned it down. I think that's why Johnson turned it down. You were in the NFC Championship game if you're Johnson. You've got a quarterback who knows your offense. He's gotten better every year he's been in it. You have to think at some point the Bears are going to fire their head coach. You can go coach Caleb Williams, or you're going to coach one of these other guys, or you're going to have a number 1 or 2 pick like DeMeco Ryans did, and you can control your own destiny a little bit. And I guarantee you DeMeco had that conversation with Slowick where he said, hey, being able to say this is my guy and I want him is a game changer. You don't want to get stuck with a lame duck quarterback. You don't want to go to Carolina and have to try and fix somebody else's decision in Bryce Young, who they traded up to get. And he's going to get maybe not 1, but not 2, maybe 3 coaches fired at some point in his career, because so much is invested in this guy that they have to find a way to make it work. We're going to wait. And I respect that amongst those coordinators that are highly sought after, instead of, say, the Patriots guys who McDaniels would go out and change his mind and come back, or Patricia went out and ruined Detroit and got fired and came back. Why leave? Why leave for a poor situation just because you can always come back? If you like it there so much, just don't leave. Don't leave until you're ready to take a great job.
Yeah, I think that's what because the 2 jobs that are left, just so everybody knows, is Seattle, who have Geno Smith and Drew Lock, I think, who's a free agent.
But either way, You want to tie your wagon at Geno?
Yeah, you mentioned Washington with Sam Howell. 21 touchdown passes. That's nothing to sneeze at.
I mean, he looked good at times. Don't get me wrong.
21 interceptions. That's a whole lot to sneeze at right there. I think you're absolutely right. And I think what these guys are learning is that if you take the wrong job, it might be the only chance you ever get.
Correct.
And I think that's what you have to look at. So look at Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith, takes the Falcons job, and now he's crawling, back, and he's taking the Pittsburgh OC job. So, and I just got, and just to give a little inside information, since I'm writing for Battle Red Blog, I got an email this morning from a guy who writes for the Patriots site saying, "Hey, can you tell me about Gerard Johnson?" And I'm sitting there thinking, if you're Gerard Johnson, what in the hell are you doing taking the Patriots job? I mean, that's an offense. Yeah, they got a top 5 pick, but what else? Okay, so let's assume that they get Daniels or Drake May to come in there. Who does he have to throw the ball to? Who's running the ball for the Patriots? You tell me.
Yeah, it's not a good situation. And yeah, the Patriots going to have a high pick, and let's say for some stupid reason, the Bears decide that they don't want Caleb Williams and they're going to stick with Justin Fields, and they want Marvin Harrison Jr., and that's what they're going to go with. Then maybe one of these, maybe Drake May falls to the Patriots and things go great. But again, Gerard Johnson's got a quarterback. He knows the odds are Slowick is going to be gone next year. He's got one more year as an understudy. Both of them got a pay bump. And he's going to learn the offense even better and even take notes. Hey, maybe I do this a little bit differently. Maybe in this situation, this is what we called. I think I would have gone this way because that job's going to be yours in 2 years. And I think everybody in the building knows it. And when you look at good coaches, they develop talent that goes out and it's successful. Good teams that have had coaches that are there for a long time have a regime that spits out talent. It's what they do. The head coach is good at what he does. He trains his staff. He is able to find and develop talent within his own organization that is then able to go out and do the same. Either it's not always successful with every assistant, but you look at the San Francisco 49ers, McDaniel's doing a pretty darn good job in Miami, at least on the offensive side of the ball. D'Amico's doing a fantastic job in Houston. And Salah has a great defense. And who knows what would have happened if Aaron Rodgers was there in New York. And they even found a way to win games with Zach Wilson. So, the guy's not a bad coach at all. He has really bad luck this year, and it's the Jets. But at the end of the day, this organization is in the Super Bowl. They've got 3 other coaches that are doing a good job to great job. I would say D'Amico did a great job this year. I would say Mike McDaniels did a good job, and I'd say Salah did a pretty good job, all things considered. And they're still in the Super Bowl. They haven't lost anybody. Andy Reid's got a coaching tree shooting out his ass that's got coaching trees on top of coaching trees on top of it, right? Doug Peterson in Jacksonville is one of his guys. They're all over the league.
I was going to say, one of the things I told the Patriots, beat writer was that the problem that you don't know, and this is particularly for those from the outside looking in, how much did Jared Johnson had to do with the Texans offense? We know he coached quarterbacks. We know he probably had a lot to do with C.J. Stroud's development, but how much is he having to do with game plan? That's just something we don't know. But to me, the person who has been shafted for, I would say, 2 or 3 years, because you mentioned the Andy Reid coaching tree, is what happened to Eric Bieniemy? He's a guy that was the Kansas City's OC, and everybody would say, well, Andy Reid's calling plays. Look at Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan gets a job in Tennessee. He wasn't calling plays in Tennessee. That was Zach Taylor. So why is Brian Callahan getting a job and Eric Bieniemy's still sitting there twiddling his thumbs? He's actually calling plays in Washington, and he actually turned that offense into a pretty decent offense. That defense is what let that team down. Now, Sam Howell.
Well, and the 21 turnovers.
Yeah, but
that's not on Bieniemy. That's probably on not having a good enough quarterback coach to help him get through his progressions good.
Yeah, and so to me, I wonder why he's gotten no interviews in this cycle. Seattle and Washington are still looking for people. I don't think he's going to get the job in Washington because he's there. And if they would have wanted him, they would have already taken him up already. So, it looks like those two teams are looking at guys that are currently part of the Chiefs.
Yeah, it's been an exciting year, and I've said many times the Big 12 is going to be the most cutthroat basketball conference in the country. TCU plays great ball; they're a great home team. Iowa State, tough place to go play basketball. BYU, tough place to go play basketball. University of Texas, tough place to go play basketball. University of Houston, one of the toughest places in the country to go play basketball. All in one conference. And, the Cougs stumbled a couple times early on. They got hit in the mouth at Iowa State. They got hit in the mouth at TCU. But, man, they had a fantastic bounce back against BYU. And they looked pretty darn good defensively down the stretch last night against an unranked but still pretty darn good UT team. And I don't know, just beating UT always feels good. I know they're not ranked. I know we are. But that game would have hurt if we lost that game. We were up. We went ice cold for about 10 minutes in the middle of the game. And then Shed, who, by the way, if he doesn't get more attention for the National Player of the Year, it's a travesty. The guy can score 20. He can give you 15 assists if that's what the game calls for. He's unbelievably clutch on defense. He is one of the best on-ball guard defenders in the entire country. And he just is one of the most selfless players in the entire league. And he's never going to sit there and try and promote himself. He will always say, I look good because my teammates make me look good. But at the end of the day, if he doesn't get top 5 consideration for the Naismith Award, it's a travesty. The guy should be a first-round pick, and he should be someone the Rockets are circling with the biggest circle possible, because that's who you want running your second unit. A guy like Jamal Shed coming off the bench to run your second unit would be a godsend for that basketball team.
To you, so this will probably go back to the edge of your basketball rooting days. So I'll give you the Big 12 or the ACC circa 1990s and 2000s. Which conference are you taking? Which conference are you wanting to watch those games?
It's tough because I got to be honest, I'm a bit of a homer when it comes to college basketball, and also on top of it, the shooting in college basketball in the late 90s, early 2000s was terrible. We are much better jump shooters as a whole, as a country today than we were back then. So I'm going to take the Big 12. But simply because I cannot stand watching kids miss open shots. Like, that's one of the main reasons I watched mostly NBA basketball for the longest time before UH got good, is because college basketball drove me crazy with the amount of open looks that these kids miss. If you give an NBA player 10 wide open looks from 3, he's hitting at least 7 of them. We're like, some of these kids are going like 5 for 10 at best. And no offense to any of them, I just couldn't watch it until my team was good enough to warrant watching.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm with you on that one. The Horned Frogs just came off a triple overtime win at Baylor, and I think U of H became the third team in the Big 12, behind TCU, and I can't remember who the third team was. I want to say Iowa State, but maybe I'm wrong. With two conference road wins, you referenced all the different places that are difficult for teams to go to win, and it's absolutely true. It got to the point where the guys that are commentating for the Baylor and TCU game were talking about the mechanics of how do you make a rushing of the floor viable. Because there's a huge debate, whether you should allow kids to rush the floor or not. And they're saying, yeah, there's some things mechanically you can do here. You can move the road team over here, but just to have 8 teams in the top 25, I don't think the ACC ever had that. I think if you go back maybe to the 80s, by volume, maybe the Big East back in those days, like when you had Georgetown and St. John's and schools like that, probably had volume, maybe that amount of good teams. But those are back in the days when conferences had 8 teams. So you were talking like maybe 4 or 5 or 6 teams in the top 25. But yeah, top to bottom. And just imagine UT is not a great basketball school. Oklahoma's okay. I think they're in the top 25, but they're traditionally not a great one. You're throwing them out. You're bringing in Arizona. You're bringing in Arizona State. You're bringing in now Colorado, not really a great basketball school. And then I think who's the fourth team we're bringing in? So Arizona State. Help me out here, Tim. Colorado, and who's the fourth team from the Pac-12 we're bringing in?
Utah.
Yeah, Utah. Utah's a good basketball school. So you're talking about Arizona and Utah, two strong traditional programs, and that more than replaces Oklahoma and Texas. This basketball conference is going to get even better next year.
Yeah, it's gonna be really tough. And winning the Big 12 is absolutely gonna mean something when you have to go through that gauntlet year in and year out, right? That's gonna just be an unbelievable basketball conference. It is an unbelievable basketball. I can't wait for this conference tournament, man. This one's gonna be insane.
Well, what excites me is that, and coaches will tell you this, when you start getting into a tournament or a playoff situation, what you've had to face in the regular season matters. And so imagine, U of H, U of H running into another similar ranked program, and the number of H has had to run through just already this year. We're not even into March. Versus a team from another conference that might have one or two other good teams in the conference, and that's it. So, what does that mean in a close game? What does that mean in a tough tournament game when pressure's high? I have to wonder, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Big 12. Number one, how many tournament teams do they get? Because you have 8 teams in the top 25. Logically speaking, all 8 of those teams have to be tournament teams. So, what do those teams do in the tournament whenever they're facing an equally matched team that maybe has not had the difficult schedule the teams in the Big 12 have? St. John's. Well, and really as from a personal basis, while I'm a horned frog and I bleed purple, if I were to bleed a second color, it would be Cougars red, because it is where I got my master's degree. So they're kind of an adopted school, and for any TCU fan, what they'll tell you, there are two schools that we love to beat. SMU, who are not in the Big 12. Sorry, guys, but we love beating the Baptist. I mean, there is no other team that we enjoy beating more. But and I think to kind of segue into our our next topic, um, one of the things we've seen is the Rockets kind of develop, and one of those guys who seems to be developing lately is Jalen Green. And Jalen Green is a guy that has gotten, I think, a scumbag nomination a couple of times in the old version of the podcast. He's a 21-year-old kid. And somebody made the point, and and it was absolutely, this is the first year that he's ever played competitive basketball. You think about it. He went to the NBA DL. They're not playing competitive basketball. Even when you're on a good team in the NBA DL, nobody gives a shit about defense. Nobody really gives a shit about who's winning and losing. Everybody's about, like, let me get mine, and then let me look good for the draft, or maybe look good to get signed, by an NBA team. The thing is, playing in the Big 12 and playing in a conference like that, you mentioned, some, Cougar prospects, but they're going to be prospects on some of these other Big 12 teams who are battle tested. They're winning. They're used to playing winning basketball. That's something Jalen Green has done in the last 4 games with the Rockets, where he's actually making an effort, rebounding the basketball. He's had 3 double-doubles. I don't know if he ever had a double-double in the last 2 years. And he's had that in the last 4 games. But you look at, some of these other players who had to learn how to play winning basketball. Give me a guy in the draft who's played 2 or 3 years in the Big 12, who's already had to learn how to play winning basketball.
Yeah, and you talk about Jalen Green. It's a great segue into the Rockets, right? Because he's playing winning basketball now, and the last 3 games he's playing quality winning basketball. Double doubles for the first time ever in his career, and then he goes 2 more right after it. Cam Whitmore's playing great basketball. These guys are getting that taste of it, and it's for Jalen. It's sad that it's happening now, but I sent you a thread a week ago, a Twitter thread listing everything that Jalen Green's doing poorly and the reasons why we could be in trouble. We might need to trade him away. And then immediately that night he went for like 30 and 10, and he's been fantastic since then. And it leads me to wonder, is this the new Jalen Green? Did we find something by giving Whitmore playing time? Or do you still think maybe we do need to trade this guy because we've got Whitmore? He's playing his best ever, and his value's kind of at his highest.
Well, did you ever see the movie The Natural?
Absolutely.
Do you remember that scene after Robert Redford, Roy Hobbs hits the cover off the ball? And
Yes.
The manager brings Bump Bailey into his office.
Yeah.
He sits there and says, I think Roy Hobbs can fill your position quite well. And all of a sudden, Bump Bailey goes out, it's like 3 for 3 and has made like 3 or 4 great catches and
runs through a wall.
Mysteriously dies, during the game.
After running through a wall.
And I have to wonder if he really did die, or if they just said, like, okay, we're going to let you fake your own death and, do whatever. But I really do think Cam Whitmore's play allowed Udoka to bring Jalen into the office. Says, you know what? We have a 2-guard right here that could take your spot quite ably. So, you need to show up. And to me, if Jalen is going to be a 20-point-a-game guy who also plays some defense and also grabs some boards, Whitmore is the perfect sixth man because he is a guy that comes off the bench and is immediate, instant energy. I don't know if you went back and rewatched the end of that first quarter against the Lakers, the last 4 minutes. He scores 12 points against the Lakers in the last 4 minutes of that quarter. 3 of them on poster-esque dunks. In fact, there was one at the first half where I think LeBron fouled him. And if LeBron hadn't fouled him, LeBron would have been posterized. I mean, it was unbelievable physical, just a marvel. It reminded me not necessarily of the moment, because I think the Tracy McGrady moment where he reeled off, all those points against the Spurs at the end of the game was a huge moment. But it was reminiscent of that in terms of like just the whirlwind of success in 4 minutes of play.
No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it was a great performance all around against the Lakers. It's always nice to play well against LeBron, and I think Whitmore said as much realistically when he talked about playing against LeBron, right? Being able to say, this guy's the greatest player who's ever played. I want to bring my best game against this guy. I really brought it tonight, and that was on purpose. That was done because I want to beat LeBron. And so we saw that nastiness, we saw that tenacity, but that attitude needs to happen every night, right? Like, you need to find somebody on every team that you want to embarrass, if that's what it is, or somebody on every team that you say, this guy's really good, I want to beat him.
Yeah, what I loved about that game, and the commentators were making a point about Whitmore, and the last thing I'll say about him is they were making the point of, look back to what happened the first time that Jalen Green and Jabari Smith played against the Lakers. The moment was too big for them. They got caught up in the glittering lights and LeBron and the unibrow and all those guys, and the moment was just too big for them. This was Whitmore's first moment against the Lakers. He scored 18 points in, I want to say, like 12 or 13 minutes.
I think he had to get like 16 total minutes, but yeah, there was some garbage time at the end where it wasn't really worth it to put up shots. But in the time that mattered, right, he put up 18 points in like a total of 12 minutes very quickly, and it was impactful, and it changed the entire landscape of that game.
And I've said this before on the old podcast, but I think it bears repeating. What Fred VanVleet does on a nightly basis is a perfect model for Jalen Green. Fred VanVleet did not make a single field goal from the field in this game. I think he scored, I want to say, like 4 or 5 points, all on free throws. But I looked up in the third quarter when the game was still more or less in doubt, and he's sitting there with 9 assists. And so I don't know how many assists he actually ended up with. Probably maybe 10 or 11. But the point is, he does something to help your team every night. Even when his shot's not falling, he's doing something. Okay, he's picking up a key steal. He's taking good care of the basketball. He's getting the other guys involved. He's making a key pass. He's doing something to help the team. And you looked at, and you sent a GIF of Parkman for Major League 2 for our friend Dylan Brooks, because Dylan Brooks is absolutely a guy that if I were not a Rockets fan, or when he was with the Grizzlies, he would be a guy that I would absolutely hate. Absolutely hate. But he's on the Rockets, and we're like, man, we love you. We love how you're just, getting in people's faces, and you're just, just getting them flustered. You could tell LeBron was just beside himself and really wasn't mentally completely in that game because of what Dylan Brooks was doing. Was some of it 100% clean? No, it wasn't. But he's our guy, and you got to love to have that on your side.
Absolutely. I think I sent you a Jack Parkman link, right? Because from Major League 2, if you haven't seen Major League 2, I don't necessarily blame you, but in Major League 2, they signed a guy in the offseason who he does a little shimmy as he gets to the batter's box. And at the beginning of the movie, when he's on the Indians, Bob Uecker says, a shimmy that makes all the women here in Cleveland swoon. And then he gets traded to the White Sox. And as he's doing the shimmy, then he's on the radio, and it's, his shimmy that makes all the women in Cleveland puke. And so it's when he's on your team, you love him. When he's not, you hate him. I think it used to be, PJ Tucker was that way. When it was the Patrick Beverly, I think is a fantastic example of like, I'll go to bat for Patrick Beverly. I fucking love that guy. But I guarantee you Oklahoma City fans do not feel the same way, and they hate Patrick Beverly, and rightfully so. And it is what it is. He's a tense player, and typically those guys are very fiercely supported by the local fan bases and strongly hated by everybody else. And that's okay. We'll take it that way. Dylan Brooks is our guy. I'll go to battle for him because he goes to battle every single night. And I love it. And I appreciate the effort on his part.
So realistically, I don't know what this team does at the deadline. I think, you had mentioned an interesting trade proposal involving Jalen Green for Brandon Ingram. I don't know after these last few games if you make that same deal. So, and obviously we don't know if New Orleans would either. But I think the question is, if you want to keep this core together, you've got Victor Oladipo's contract, which is, I think, $8 or $9 million. You've got Londale's contract, which is, and he doesn't play, and he's going to be an expiring contract as well. So you've got some money to play with. You're obviously going to have to throw in some draft picks if you want anything that's of real value. So if you're looking just, maybe not specific guys, but if you're looking at this team, you mentioned a 40% 3-point shooter, but what is one thing that you would love for this team to add, before the deadline?
I'd love another gunner off the bench. Just a guy. Do you remember when we had? I can't remember his name. Just the guard that came off the bench like 5 or 6 years ago. It was kind of like Jamal Crawford, but it was like a poor man's Jamal Crawford. It's gonna drive me.
You're not talking Delfino, are you?
No. He was a guy who literally he played point guard but did not ever pass the ball. Right?
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Oh man, I can't think of his name, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Either way, right? Like that's what we need. We need a guy who's going out there to get his 15 off the bench. Because I think there are times where this team really lacks an identity on the court. I think when Sengun is out there, we're gonna feed the offense through him. But at the moment his shot doesn't fall, we go away from it, right? And then I think we get a little out of sorts until we get back into what we do well. But if we had a guy on the bench who gave you 15 a night, just a straight gunner, I think that's what you need. Because I think defensively they're pretty okay with what they've got. Any big time rim protector that you go and get is just going to take away from what Sengun can do. And so I don't necessarily want to hinder his development. I'd rather him get a little bit better as a rim protector as opposed to bringing in some 7-footer who doesn't offer a ton offensively just to help protect the rim, because then our spacing is going to get all out of whack offensively. You're going to move Sengun to the 4. You're going to play Jabari a lot less, or you move Jabari to the 3, and now Dylan Brooks is playing less. It's a mess, right? Like, that's why I feel like you add to the bench, you go get more firepower, and you kind of take it from there.
What I would love to do, actually, because, and my thinking has changed, because my thinking about 3 or 4 games ago would have been to get a backup 2 guard, because I was worried about Jalen Green. I was worried about, okay, Jalen doesn't have it. Who's coming in the game? I think that's Cam Whitmore right now.
Yeah.
And I think Thompson, I've seen he can't shoot the basketball at all, but, he's had some impressive moments passing the ball. So I think he's at least a decent enough backup 1. What I would love to see is that when you look at this team, Dylan Brooks is a guy, he almost fouled out of this last game. And so he's a guy that I don't think he's a 35-minute a game guy. I think he's more of a 25 to 30, play as hard as you can for as long as you can. And maybe you give up some fouls, and maybe, you get teed up and you get tossed from a game. I would love another version of him, another 3-and-D guy, somebody that could play 15, 20 minutes a night and could be that
Lou
similar.
Williams was the guy. Lou Williams is who I was trying to get to. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that guy. But I would love a guy that could come in 15, 20 minutes a night and do what Dylan Brooks does. Because you want to talk about frustrating an offense. Because, right now when Dylan Brooks goes to bench, that other team's going, whew, thank God that guy's off the floor now.
Yeah.
Could you imagine bringing somebody else who does the exact same thing? Going, oh, crap, now I got to deal with this guy. And so, that's a guy, and I don't know who that is. And I don't know if that guy's available, but that's somebody I would love to have.
No, I definitely think that would be an added bonus to this club to have another guy who can come in and play lockdown defense. Tari is a high energy guy, but he's banged up, right? Tari Easton has been hurt for a while. Even when he plays, he's playing hurt. I think Whitmore is a pretty good defender. I expect maybe a little more out of him defensively. And then Thompson, I think, is just so young. He doesn't read what's happening in front of him well enough yet to be a great defender. I think he's athletic and fast, and he can make up for when he gets beat. But I think he makes some of the flashy plays that make you look like you're a good defender. He picks up steals. He does things like that because he cuts in front of passes. But his just base one-on-one defense is not there yet. So you're definitely right. Could use another defender out there. And I think, again, realistically, Scott, right, we're looking at a team that's vying for a play-in game, right? And I think we trade draft picks with the Nets this year, right? And so you're going all in, trying to get the playoff experience. Do you want to give up too much to try and win a play-in game? I don't know. I don't want to maybe mess up the chemistry of this team too much. Jalen Green's that one guy I have circled. I'm willing to move him to make this team better. I'm not willing to move him just to move him.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. So last thing, I think before we get to our favorite part of the week, or maybe your favorite part of the week, we hope. Obviously, we're getting the calendar is flipping over to February. We're getting pretty close to spring training. And so, I think all your major league teams are making your last second moves in order to, get their roster set. I mean, you saw the Mariners trade for Jorge Polanco. I don't know what you think of that move for them. I'm not a big fan, but, hey, yeah, I love to see my opponents get worse. So I think, Dana Brown has mentioned getting a left-handed bat that could play in the outfield. I personally don't care about handedness of hitters. As I've always said about pitchers, throw it righty, throw it lefty, shoot it out of your ass. I don't care. Get hitters out. And I think with hitters, it's kind of the same deal. So throwing a few names out at you, you still got Jorge Soler on the board. You still got JD Martinez on the board. You got a guy like Adam Duvall on the board. You've got a guy like Tommy Pham on the board. Are any of those names striking your fancy? I'm eliminating Cody Bellinger because I just don't see him as a price fit.
Yeah.
So the rest of those four guys, if you wanted to rank order them, like where would you put them in rank order?
For me personally, just out of those four, Soler is going to be first just because the guy's got 30, 35 homer potential, and that's playing in other ballparks. You give that guy 81 games at Minute Maid Park with a short porch in left field. 35 is not out of the question. 35, 40 is not out of the question with a guy like Soler, right? So to me, that kind of pop is something that just gives this team a whole nother level of flexibility in how we deploy things. You can give them some starts in right and let Tucker take a day off as DH and let Jordan play left field. You can play him in left with Chaz in center. You can play him in left with Myers in center. You can DH him and let Jordan have a day off, not just a DH day. I mean, there's so many different options there. I'd say Duvall number 2 for me, just because he's one of those guys that goes down the Astro killer category. There's just something about that guy when he gets to Minute Maid Park, he plays really, really well. So my hope would be he would replicate that success as an Astro. But again, not a huge want. Really, the only guy on that list I want is Soler. There is a rumor floating out there that the Astros are interested in Kepler. He might be available coming from the Twins, left-hander. Pretty high prospect that maybe just hasn't panned out. Kind of similar to the Kelenic deal and him getting traded to the Braves. It's something that I feel like could be a low risk, high reward kind of move if the Astros can get him for a not top level prospect. Like if you could trade Corey Julks and another pitcher for Max Kepler, something along those lines, I'd say pull the trigger. So to me, it'd be either trade for Kepler or sign Jorge Soler. But overall, I mean, I feel pretty good with where this team's at, right? Like I don't have a ton of concerns. I feel like we're a very good team on paper. I feel like the Astros made moves to get better this offseason. And I don't think I can say the same thing about, like the defending World Series champion Rangers, right? Like they lost Scherzer to injury. Montgomery hasn't re-signed. Chapman's gone elsewhere. You signed an older David Robertson, who, if you look at the splits, really wasn't good towards the end of the year last year. I don't know, like that. Yeah, they can still slug. They're going to still have an offense, but now also they're in an arbitration dispute with Adolis Garcia, and so like I get that this is a business, but the guy literally just put this team on his back and help you win a World Series. Do you really want to create a rift with that guy? And you can say what you want, but arbitration will create a rift. Ask Kyle Tucker.
Yeah, I think the question, and this is more of a philosophical question for a guy like a Dana Brown, or if you put on your GM hat, I think the odds are the Astros are a playoff team. I don't think there's any bones about it. I think the Mariners have definitely taken a step back, if not two. I think the Rangers have taken a step back in that, if they don't re-sign Jordan Montgomery, which I don't know if they had the finances to do that, their rotation, Montgomery's gone. Scherzer and DeGrom are out for at least half the season. They lost Martin Perez. So you tell me what they got coming back in terms of a rotation. I mean, that's rough. But I think the question is, do you play to put together the best regular season team that you can and hope that everything works out in the playoffs? Or do you set up a team specifically for the playoffs thinking, oh, we'll get there, and hoping everything works out? Because to me, Jorge Soler is a guy that you are going to absolutely bludgeon teams to death in the regular season. Like I can imagine going up against the Oakland A's pitching staff or a Kansas City Royals pitching staff, this team routinely putting up 10 plus runs with Jorge Soler on this team. But when you get into the playoffs, are there some rotations out there? Are there some individual pitchers out there that could lock a team like that down when you have like some high strikeout, low walk guys? That's possible. So would a JD Martinez, while maybe not being better for the regular season, a guy who maybe is more of an RBI kind of guy, more of I'm going to put the ball in play and get the run home. Is that something that would be more palatable? I just crunched numbers for every, not every player, but, for all the prominent players for fantasy purposes. Max Kepler is an intriguing player to me because he's been playing right field for the Twins. So he obviously can play right field. I think anybody can play left field in Minute Maid Park. So you already have a guy that can play both corner outfield spots. So I think like Soler, he's a guy that would give you that ability to mix and match a lineup. And he might be a really good marriage between, that regular season dominance, but having a guy that would do the things you would need to do in a postseason series to win those series.
Yeah, I think it's a little premature as a GM to build for the postseason, right? Because I think as a GM, obviously you want to win a championship and you want to have a roster that can make it through that tournament that is the postseason, but you got to get there first. And you look at some of the moves the Astros made over the course of time. Sometimes they were made with the thought of let's make this a championship run, all on '98, going to get Randy Johnson. But then there are other times where you got guys that you needed to go just help win the division or help make the playoffs. Like in 2017, when this team was, fading a bit down the stretch. I'm sorry, 2015, when this team was fading down the stretch, and they went and got Carlos Gomez and Mike Fiers. You know, we saw in 2017, Mike Fiers wasn't a guy that was going to help you in the playoffs because he wasn't even on the playoff roster. But Mike Fiers threw a regular season no-hitter. Mike Fiers was a productive person during the regular season. The same could be said for the pitcher that went from us to the Rangers that we were happy when he'd give us Odorizzi, right? Like Odorizzi you need a guy like that as a fifth starter, but you don't need a fifth starter in the playoffs. So then at that point, you're taking an extra bullpen guy because you might need a bullpen guy. You build your roster for the season, and then you take that roster and try and find a way to utilize it the best in a playoff scenario.
I think your point on Fiers is actually an excellent one because, if you look at that 2017 season, I think, I want to say it was in June, he was the best pitcher on this team.
Yeah.
In June that year. Now, he sucked the rest of the year, but it was a situation where we were banged up for whatever reason. The guys that we had in the rotation were, it seemed like there were like 2 or 3 of them that were out. And so he was the guy that got you through. And you mentioned Odorizzi as a guy that, you could count on for 4 or 5 good innings. I think beyond that, he wasn't really worth a heck of a lot. But yeah, I think in crunching the numbers in terms of offense, I think Jake Meyers has the potential to be a 2-win defender if playing every day. The problem is he's just not going to offer a whole lot offensively on top of that.
Yeah, now, I mean it's Jake Merznick all over again, right? Like you've got a guy who's a fantastic, but so was Jake. Jake Merznick was fantastic in center field. The guy played one of the best center fields we've ever seen, but we don't see a lot of it because he can't fucking hit. The world is littered with 230 hitters who are, bagging groceries, right? Like at the end of the day, your defense is only. I used to talk to my dad about Adam Everett back in the day. How does this guy not have a Gold Glove? And his answer was because he can't hit 250. You can be as good a defender as you want to be, but you've at least got to swing the stick well enough to get noticed. And Jake Meyers hasn't done that in his MLB career past his injury. Before he had the shoulder injury, he had some pop. He was swinging it well. He's a 250, 260 hitter. He has been a shell of that since he messed up his shoulder trying to rob that home run in Chicago.
And who knows? Maybe it's a health thing, and he gets he gets right physically, and it comes around. But I kind of liken him. You mentioned Jake Marisnick. That's a great comp. For Astros fans, the comp I would make throughout Major League Baseball is Harrison Bader, who just signed with the Mets. He's a guy that when he came up with the Cardinals, and you saw him first come up, and you're thinking, man, this guy's a great fielder. Man, if this guy could just hit a little more. And you kept looking at him, and there were like flashes. And Myers does the same thing. There are flashes. There are games when he hits a home run, and you're like, man, if he could just do this more. But he never does. And so to me, I don't mind, him being, a part of the mix as a fourth outfielder type. But you got to get somebody else in there. And Corey Jokes showed maybe he improves, but he showed that really he wasn't quite it either in left field. So to me, signing a veteran or trading for a veteran would be just a nice finishing move for this team.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And it's tweaking, right? We're tweaking at this point. We're being picky. We've got a great roster, with health coming back. And this is what we as fans have a luxury to do. So I will say I would like Soler. I would like Kepler, one of those two. Um, we'll see. I don't want to see a lot of Jake Myers. I really don't. But I would love to also be made to eat crow because going into last year, I don't know if I was totally sold on Chas McCormick as my everyday center fielder. And now I'm kind of pissed that you're moving him to left when you could have had Chas in center and Soler in left, right? But, Dana Brown has done a good job at finding young talent and developing young talent. A lot of it, in my opinion, has come from the Latin American world, especially when you look at what he's done with the Braves. But that's also where the Astros have had some success and a lot of success in the world of their pitching. So we'll see with Myers, but I do think the fruits of Dana Brown's labor we're going to start to see in 3 or 4 years, especially we had a good round of international signings this year. And that's where that guy has made his bread and butter his entire career.
Okay, I think it's finally time to shift to that favorite part of the week, at least for our listening audience. So we got tips of the cap, and we've got your scumbags. So starting
Scott,
off with,
I've got these new beautiful graphics that we're working with. So we're actually splitting them up. We're going to do tip of the cap, and then we're going to do scumbag of the week. Because again, I've got, as you can see right here, this beautiful tip of the crap logo that we've got going on right here.
So who has been a positive experience for you this week?
I think you and I talked about this throughout the week. For me, it is the TCU women's basketball team. They had a litany of injuries that caused the team to have to forfeit, I believe it was 3 straight games. They reached out on campus to find, is there anybody who can help us, right? We're literally about to lose our whole season because of these injuries. And they hold tryouts, just trying to find some talent on campus. Now, this happened when I was in college. I wasn't at UH at the time, but while I was in college, University of Houston lost like 3 quarterbacks in 1 week. And they were literally out scouting the intramural fields, trying to find somebody to be that backup for the Cougars. But TCU puts out a open tryout, and it just so happened, Scott, that they had 3 former Texas State champions on campus in Piper Davis, Ella Hamlin, and Micaiah Moore. And in Micaiah Moore's case, she had thought her basketball career was done, was there on a academic scholarship, and then saw the tryout and said, you know what, maybe my time's not done. And these girls stepped up. They made the team. They allowed their university to continue to play. They allowed those girls who are on scholarship to continue to play, and they get to continue to play as well. And so I want to tip my cap to the TCU women's basketball team on finding a way to get it done in less than ideal circumstances.
So as far as my tip of the cap, we mentioned it earlier in the episode, but I want to give it a little bit more air and a little bit more steam here. And my tip of the cap goes to Bobby Slowick and Gerard Johnson. Bobby Slowick is the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans, who could still be in the running if he wanted to for the Seattle or the Washington head coaching jobs, particularly since Johnson turned them down, from Detroit to do the exact same thing. You could have seen them pivot to Bobby Slowick, and and that might have been a job that he could have taken. And Gerard Johnson got interviews in New Orleans, for their OC position, and he was set to interview in New England for their OC position. But they decided that now they're getting raises, they're getting paid. But you know what? The Texans had a brilliant comeback season, going from 3 wins and a tie to 10 wins. So absolutely, should some assistant coaches be getting rewarded? Absolutely. But I think particularly in Bobby Slowick's case, he is a guy that I think really needs a second season. He really needs to look at what he did this year and build on it. What are some things that he can improve on? Can he develop a better running game? Maybe you give him some better linemen, maybe you give him some better backs, maybe he develops a running game. But one of the things he also needs to do is he needs to be able to have the experience of defensive coordinators looking at 2023 game tape and saying, you know what, now I figured out how to stop the Texans. And he needs to have the experience of pivoting from that and saying, okay, I see what you're doing. I'm going to counter doing this, and we're going to have some more success. And I think that having that experience, having that second season of where he has to do that is going to make him a whole lot better coach if he becomes a head coach. And as you pointed out earlier, also this is going to a little bit of self-interest on his part, looking at the landscape out there and what team and quarterback situation do you really want to take on at this point? And you mentioned, hey, what if Matt Eberflus gets fired next year and you get Caleb Williams as your guy? Yeah, that's a guy I'd want to hitch my wagon to. So I think, a lot of these coaches I think are smart, and then both of them I think are smart to stick around, but also they see that we have a good thing going, and let's run it back for at least one more season.
And I think they both made the right call. I really do. Johnson and CJ Stroud have a close personal relationship. Bobby Slowick and D'Amico obviously have a personal relationship. Bobby and CJ have a relationship. As a coach, as any worker, right? Like when you get a chance to work with one of the best in the field, right? You cherish those opportunities. So if you really believe in CJ Stroud as much as we all do, and you think this guy could be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, it's not easy to decide not to work with a guy like that anymore. It's a tough decision, and it's one that you're not going to take lightly. So I commend not just Bobby and the Texans. I commend this current crop of assistants for legitimately weighing these job opportunities and not just jumping. And I think you're right on everything that you said. I think in times past, anytime you got the offer, it was just expected, hey, I got my head coaching offer, I'm going to go. But also you got 3-4 years to get things going in a good direction. There was a lot longer leash. You were never fired after 1 year, not 2 years, maybe 3. But in today's NFL, where we've seen guys fired after 1 year, twice here in Texas, in Houston, we saw the Panthers not even make it through the season with their first-year head coach. I'm not going to risk my family. I'm not going to move my family to a new state, go through all this hassle, unless I got a stud at quarterback or I got a chance to pick my quarterback. And I absolutely commend the coordinators who decided that it wasn't worth it for them and made the right choice for themselves and their family, and not just jump at an opportunity just to say that they were head coaches.
Okay, so it is the other time of the week when we get to people that have sticked in our craw for scumbags. And I'll let Tim lead off this week with his scumbag.
This one was a tough one for me, Scott. I had one that I was kind of sticking with, and I actually called my local government representatives about this issue because it was just driving me crazy. But then today, our former president and loser of $83 million lawsuit, Donald J. Trump, tweeted out that he is bigger than Taylor Swift, that he is more popular than Taylor Swift, that he is going to start a holy war against Taylor Swift. Number one, don't come at Taylor. That's my girl. Okay, we are a pro Swift house here at the Costello household. Cannot think of a much better example for my young girls to emulate as far as a business person, a philanthropist, an artist, good-natured human being. And for some reason, the football world gets a little mad because they show her on TV when she's supporting Travis Kelce. The Republican world gets mad because she encouraged people to register to vote. All she didn't say go vote for this specific person. She said register to vote. They're haters. Her song said it the best. The haters are going to hate. But don't come for my girl Taylor. Donald is a douchebag. He's literally a loser. He is a rapist. And again, these are all facts in court. Like this isn't even, he lost his case. Maybe the douchebag part isn't a fact in court, but he legally, by definition of a judge, he committed rape. He is a rapist and he is a defamer. And Taylor is not those things. Taylor is, again, a philanthropist, an inspiration to young women everywhere, and a billionaire, a legitimate billionaire, which Donald Trump, as we now know, really we knew for a while, he literally has like no actual money. Taylor legitimately has fucking money. She could buy every one of his buildings, blow them up, and then just pee on them if she wanted to, because she legitimately has $1 billion.
Well, and she obviously has an industry where she can print money. I mean,
Well, she's the smartest. She's one of the smartest. She owns her label.
Right. And
she re-recorded all of her songs, gets all the money for the play. Like, I think as a society, we know artists get fucked over by the recording industry. We've known that. And we just were like, it sucks. She figured out a way to say, no, I'm not gonna play that game. I'm gonna re-record all my music on my own label, and I'm gonna get all of my money. And I commend her.
Imagine somebody, because just the amount of money that these artists make off their concert tours. And imagine that she managed to find a way to not only go on tour worldwide, but make a feature film based off of it. And how much money is that making? I mean, it's just absolutely insane. And to me,
and what's crazy is the film's going to make her a ton of money, right? But also, it's a service to the fans, because how many parents can afford to take their kids to that concert? Because let's be honest, $250 for a concert ticket's fucking crazy. But you could afford a movie. You could go see a movie.
Yeah,
and you know what? If you can't afford to go to the movies, eventually it was available at your house for $25.
Yeah, Anne's already gone to the theater to see it. I mean, we couldn't afford to give, and you, even if you could, you had to wait in line, you had to get in a queue, and you had to be lucky, to get those concert tickets. And so, and we could literally afford $250. So I mean, I'm sitting here, talking on a Mac and talking on, a microphone that we purchased. So, what you choose to spend your money on is what you choose to spend your money on. But the fact is that what has she done that's objectionable?
She encouraged people to register to vote.
Nothing. And so
no, that's what they don't like. That she encouraged people who are most likely not going to vote for Donald Trump to register to vote.
So moving on to my scumbag is actually going to be related. And I said in the last podcast, and I mean it, that Donald Trump will never be a scumbag for me, because you have to be human to be a scumbag. And to me, he's a cartoon character. He's like, I said this before, he's like a Bond villain that had a traumatic brain injury. To me, the people that piss me off, Donald Trump has been what Donald Trump has been since the 1970s. This is a guy that he and his father got sued by the Nixon administration. Let me set that up again. The Nixon administration for racist practices. I mean, in order to be called racist by the Nixon administration, you gotta be pretty fucking racist to be called racist by the Nixon administration. Now, the one who gets my scumbag this week is none other than Senator Lindsey Graham. Because I don't know if you heard about this. Have you heard about his testimony to the grand jury?
I haven't, no.
So this happened obviously a while ago, and it got leaked to the press. So in Georgia, Fani Willis was trying to get him to testify, and Lindsey Graham kept trying legal maneuver to keep from testifying, and then finally testifies. And so in the leaked part of the testimony, he said that you could basically tell Donald Trump that the Martians stole the election. And not only would he believe it, but he'd be like, I've done so much for the Martians. I've done so much for them. Nobody's done more for the Martians than I have. And look what they've done to me. They've betrayed me and all that. So, but here's what he did afterwards. He apparently found Miss Willis in the hallway afterwards and practically hugged her and thanked her for allowing him the opportunity to say his piece. So here's what we know. What we know is based on this experience that Lindsey Graham the whole time knew he's a charlatan, a crook, a horrible person, and has been going on Fox News and every other outlet that he can and talking up this guy as if he's, the second coming of Jesus. The best name I've heard for him is there's a guy on Substack that calls him Adolf Hitler, which I think is a pretty good nickname for him. But to me, all these people who will go in public and go, oh, he's great, he's great, he's great. And then in private, he's the worst thing ever. You're a loser. You're weak. And you're ruining our country. Because the best thing you can do is you could have gone out. You could have done this in 2015, 2016. You could have done this in 2020. You could have done this in between 2016, 2020. At any point, you could have come out and said, you know what, this is enough. This guy isn't it. You could have used the Constitution to get rid of him. The cabinet could have voted him out. At any point during his presidency, you could have used either impeachment trial to get rid of him. You could have sat there and after 2020 said, okay, we're not impeaching him, but you're no longer going to be our nominee. At any point, you could have done that. At any point. And instead, you've got people like Lindsey Graham going, he's my president. And then in private saying, thank you for allowing me to tell the truth. God,
there's no one willing to speak their piece more than a Republican not seeking election, right? Like when they're done in office, they're like, okay, I'm ready to play ball now. Let's actually serve the American people. I've got 2 months before I'm kicked out of here that I'm willing to do some good. Mitt Romney's ass, fucking this, like
Jeff
they
Flake.
all knew what they could gain from it, from getting behind it, and now that they've pushed the boulder down the hill, they're like, oh no, let's stop it. And you can't stop this shit. You created a shitstorm, and now you want to try and start handing out umbrellas. Like, it's not going to work that way. It's sad, but at some point, like, there needs to be a giant, like, mass trial held against all these people that literally committed treason against the United States. But it'll never happen. It won't. And it's frustrating, as we said, these guys don't talk about anything until they're ready to retire and not be in politics anymore. And I think that's the most frustrating part for me, Scott.
Yeah, you get like a John Kelly where Trump is sitting there, in the National Cemetery, sitting there calling these soldiers, which includes John Kelly's son, suckers and losers. The fact that John Kelly didn't sit there and absolutely ever love and kick his fucking ass in that moment. I mean, that's, number one, tremendous restraint. But number two, he doesn't come out until after the presidency's over saying, man, this guy can't be president again. Where the fuck were you between 2016 and 2020 when you were sitting there in the White House? You couldn't make a call to the cabinet saying, hey, guys, we got to get this guy out. He's nuts. You couldn't do that. I mean, and the fact that you're called on, you were a general, you were called on to defend our country.
If you look back,
foreign and domestic.
If you look back, I don't want to make this comparison often, but like if you look back to Nazi Germany, the guys who rose to power were idiot sycophants, right? Like for the most part, these guys were not good at what they did. They were the ones who knew how to suck up to Hitler properly, get placed in certain positions, and take it from there. The Trump cabinet is the same thing, right? Like you had the people who understood how to push this egomaniac's buttons in the right way to get exactly what they want, to set themselves up for a career after politics in the private sector. I mean, that's what a majority of them have done, right? They can now go give speeches. They can be on the board of directors. They can do whatever they want because they were in the cabinet of the United States as Secretary of Energy, as Secretary of Education, as whatever. You're now the expert in that field. Pay me a crap ton of money to do it. And they've been set up for life because they knew how to play this egomaniac's game.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, the guy I just saw on MSNBC before I came in this room, Mr. Bolton, you remember him?
Oh, yeah. He wrote a book right after he was no longer involved in anything.
So here's somebody who is as conservative can get. And he gets to play both sides of this thing. He gets to probably
Because
say,
he wrote a book that said Trump was a
yeah,
piece of shit.
yeah, but he's a guy who probably right now is still saying, hey, let's bomb the fuck out of Iran.
Correct.
He's probably out there saying that.
Correct.
So he can sit there and he can go to MSNBC and say, look, I'm a turncoat. I'm turning states. I can, I'm a guy that's going to tell you how bad Trump was. And then he can go right over to Fox and he can sit there, let's bomb the shit out of Iran. He can play both sides. And he can make a ton of money doing it.
Yeah. It's a fucked up situation. Our entire country has been moved right as a whole because of Donald Trump, right? People like Liz Cheney are worshipped because she chose to stand up to the J6 Commission. Liz Cheney is a staunch conservative, as you're going to find, but you've got the left worshiping Liz Cheney because she actually was on the commission. Like, nah, all that happened is everybody's viewpoint moved more right. We sucked up more law and order, and crazy MAGAs voted out moderate Republicans in certain areas. So again, we moved more right. Fuck them all, Scott. It's a shitty, it's another giant deuce or a turd sandwich for the election here this year.
Yeah, or two old guys, as it usually is.
But I think that's all we've got for you here this week. As always, we appreciate everybody who stopped by, made us a part of their week. We hope you enjoyed the new production value, the new header, the border, little color, Scott's new mic. I mean, we got changes coming left and right.
Absolutely. And, please interact with us, to let us know what you're thinking on Facebook. If you have scumbags that you want to suggest, we'd love to hear suggestions. And we just, love to hear from you on what you're thinking, good or bad, about the show.
Yeah, and be sure to find us off air. Scott has a Substack, Thoughts of a Native Texan. I am on Twitter, Tim_Costello10. And then you can find the show on Facebook, Born on the Bayou Sports. On Facebook, feel free to reach out. But if you're watching this show on Facebook, hey, that's where you found it. So follow, stay tuned for more. We're continuing to grow the show, continuing to do more with the show. So we hope that everybody continues to make us a part of their week. But until next week, we are so glad that you stopped on by, and we'll see you next time.